Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading. Introducing My New Term, the revolutionary technology application connecting schools and candidates directly. Whether you're a school seeking to streamline your recruitment process or a candidate searching for your next role in education, My New Term has the solution. Developed by a former teacher, the technology at My New Term now connects tens of thousands of candidates with schools every month by digitizing the recruitment process. As a candidate, you can search for jobs, set up recommended jobs, and save time by applying directly to schools via a standardized online process. No more completing manual and repetitive application forms. Employers can streamline processes and save time utilizing the leading applicant tracking system for schools and multi-academy trusts. Recruitment in education has been broken for too long. My New Term is on a mission to change just that. Visit mynewterm.com to learn more, search all the latest opportunities, or schedule a demo. My New Term, shaping the future of education recruitment.
Hi everyone, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping by to tell you about our annual history teaching extravaganza, Teachers Talk History, which is coming at you live in Manchester on the 21st of September. The tickets are completely free for classroom teachers, amazing speakers, brilliant contributors, and a fantastic opportunity to network with fellow professionals. Grab your free ticket today at ttradio.org/events, and we will see you there.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to Teachers Talk Radio. Tonight, I don't have a guest, so this is going to be me talking, potentially, unless one of you good people would join me. It will be me talking about my back-to-school experiences and how to deal with that and how to manage that and how to make that easier and better for each of us as teachers, and with a particular focus on teachers going into new schools and new positions in new schools. And the reason I chose this topic is I put a question out on my social media a few days ago, and it got quite a big response just around sort of tips, the number one tip, if you like, for people who are going back into a school community as a new teacher, as somebody who is starting out in a new school, whether that be as a teacher, as a head of department, as a senior leader, and how to manage that, because it can be incredibly difficult. In fact, I would go as far as to say it can be one of the most challenging professional experiences is starting in a new school. I also think that sometimes it can be easy to underestimate how difficult it is. I think it can be difficult to see when you especially if you've only been in one school and then you move to the second school. I don't think it's easy to anticipate how difficult it can be to switch even into a good positive environment. It's an incredibly challenging thing. Why? Because of information overload, because you're going into a new environment with new procedures, policies, people, places. I mean, some schools that I've worked in have been huge, sprawling masses of concrete where it's incredibly difficult to navigate your way around. And in fact, by the time I've left, I still don't think I knew every room in the place. So I think it's just a really difficult one, which is why I guess in the past, I've personally, and this is my personal view, I've always sort of said in the past that if you can stay somewhere where you're happy, then stay. Obviously, for a lot of people, there are many different reasons why they move on. For example, you might be moving on for a promotion to a head of department position. You might be moving on because you've relocated. you might be moving on because you work in a toxic school and you want to try another school because that could provide an escape from the one that you're in. It could be that you've just been there for a long time and you want a change. And for all of those reasons are of course valid. But one of the things I've always thought to myself in the last few years, and bear in mind I'm coming into year 18 now, is that if you can sort of stay where you are, there's nothing wrong with staying where you are. I think that I remember my dad, who was he was a head of history. He was a head of history as well, and he taught for 34 years, and 30 of those years were in the same school. And I remember him saying, someone said to him, "Oh, you've been here 7 years now. You should think about moving on. You should think about going into another school because you've been here for 7 years." And the thing is he was pretty happy where he was, and he just stayed. And actually, there's nothing wrong with that. I do think we have it drilled into us that if we're not moving, then there's something wrong. If we're not getting promoted, then there's something wrong. If we're not taking on extra responsibilities, if things go well, then there must be something wrong. And you know what? There's some people out there with that point of view. I'm sure there are some senior leaders who look at a CV on a piece of paper and say, "Oh, you know what? Like this person's been there for 34 years. They haven't moved on. They haven't sought out senior leadership. They haven't done X, Y, Z. So therefore, there must be some deficiency there in their mentality or their way of thinking." There'll be people out there who think that, and the reason they think that is because it's so deeply embedded into our professional ethos and way of thinking over such a long period of time, for whatever reason. Now, to be fair, the wider workforce has got much more mobile anyway. I mean, in every profession you can think of, people are switching jobs. People are just switching because they can get a pay rise now. You know, back 20 years ago, I don't have, this is me talking anecdotally, but 20 years ago, I think it would have been much less likely that someone would have just jumped ship because somebody offered them an extra few £1,000s a year. Now I think there's a much more flexible and movement orientated work environment and wider professional environment. There's no reason that can't be within teaching as well. So I think the first thing is that, you know, if you are moving into a new role and you've pressed play on this podcast as a recording, then hopefully it's going to help to go through some tips and some ideas about that new school and how to approach it and how to think about your approach to it in terms of the way you're going to go about it, not just teaching, but with colleagues and the way you integrate in. Before we kick off, obviously a couple of things. One is, if anybody who's listening in live wants to call in and get involved, then you can click the little microphone icon in the bottom left, and it would be great if anybody has any thoughts on what your tips for any teacher starting a new school in September would be. No pressure, but if you want to, then you can hit the blue icon in the bottom left hand side if you're listening live, and you can call in and get involved and share your thoughts. The second thing I wanted to mention is a big shout out to our sponsors tonight, who are John Catt Educational, who are leading providers of professional development opportunities for teachers, usually in the form of books. If you haven't visited their website, johncattbookshop.com, then I highly recommend giving it a look, because there are so many amazing books on there. And if you feel so inclined, you could even use the TTR discount code JCTTR2425 and get 20% off anything you put in your basket. So yeah, thanks, John Catt. So yeah, what I thought I'd do to start with is just talk about my experiences of starting at some new schools. So the first most obvious one for me was back in 2007 when I just finished my PGCE. And I did my PGCE in Wales, in Aberystwyth, if anyone's ever been there. People often say, why on earth did you go to Aberystwyth? Well, I was born in Birkenhead, and that's where I'm from, but I went to university in Bangor in North Wales, and then I loved living in Wales, and I really had an affinity with Wales. So I thought, well, I can't do the PGCE in Bangor because they didn't offer history as an option, but Aberystwyth did offer the PGCE as an option. So the year before the PGCE, I had a year out. I lived in Tanzania for 6 months. I worked some horrible jobs. mostly selling things on a cold call basis and a door-to-door basis. I did that for sort of 6-7 months. And also I was in Tanzania, as I say, for 6 months doing a bit of sort of voluntary teaching, and that was a great experience. And then I started the PGCE, right? Went through the PGCE, and at the end of the PGCE in Aberystwyth, I got my first job, which was at a school in North Wales. And so I got the job pretty late. I got the job in the maybe like May the 25th, I think I got that job. I mean, I was running out of time. I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to be doing supply in September if I can't get a job in the next week or something. But I did get it. I did get the job. And that summer, I remember just feeling like I couldn't do anything else apart from think about this job. I just remember like it wasn't just in the back of my mind, it was in the forefront of my mind, particularly in the last, I'd say, 4 weeks of the holiday before I had to start the job in the school. I remember doing reading, but not really about anything in particular, just reading about nothing, just because it made me feel better to think I was doing something. And I remember some people telling me there's nothing you can do, and once you actually get into the job, you'll just sort of take to it and you'll power on. But I remember in the lead up to it thinking, oh, what can I do? I'm not prepared. I don't know what I'm doing. And I couldn't really know what I was doing because I didn't know what I was getting into. There was no way I could have. The only way I was going to do it was by actually doing it. So anyway, in the lead up to it, I remember there was a few weeks there where I was in a state of sort of permanent like anxiety, and I was trying to do anything I possibly could that I thought might help me in the job. Anyhow, at the start of the job, some of the things that I decided to do at the start of that particular job in 2008, I did a supply contract that summer. So at the end of my PGCE, one of the schools that I trained in offered me the chance to do a supply contract at the school. So I did a 4-week supply contract at the end of my PGCE, and it was a real eye-opener. Like, I was told to F off. I was sort of intimidated, and they tried to intimidate me in the corridors. There was all this sort of, it was a very difficult school actually in South Wales. Like, you wouldn't think it would be, but it was. And yeah, big, comprehensive, and really, really difficult, quite challenging. In Pembroke Dock, which, when I thought, oh, a nice leafy place in Pembrokeshire, that would be lovely. And, I'd spent holidays there as a youth. And then when I got to this school in Pembroke Dock, I was like, oh my God. So anyway, I did this. I accepted the contract. God knows why, this supply contract. Well, actually, I do know why, because it was money. And therefore, I didn't have to do a summer job if I did this 4-week contract. So I was like, yeah, I'll do the 4-week contract. So anyway, it was a real eye-opener. There was a lot of real challenges in the classroom in that 4-week period. So then that prepared me really well, because in the September, I was like, right, for this new job, I need to start on the front foot, and I need to really start as a mean to go on. So I sort of decided that I was going to be very, very strict. I wasn't going to be sort of the laughy, smiley, jovial Tom. I was going to be the, machine-like, professional, yes, friendly, not unfriendly, but very business-like. And, very much focused on the teaching and my job and that sort of side of things. And you know what? It was the best decision I ever made, because I didn't realize it at the time, but by doing that, there were students in the school who then picked up on that and sort of saw me in a certain way, and that carried on all the way through my 5 years there. Because, I mean, if you speak to students from that school, they would tell you that now today. If you went up to them and said, oh, what was Mr. Rogers like? Oh, he was really strict, and he was really like, sort of, I don't know if they'd say standoffish. I think they'd describe me as funny, but also I think they'd say, oh, he was a bit, like they probably wouldn't on a pastoral level have, well, maybe at the very end they might, but in the first year or two, I don't think they'd have come up to me with a problem. I think I was very much like the teacher of history, and I was there to teach history, and I was really aiming to teach it spectacularly well. Now, the flip side of that was that I was pretty strict, and therefore, maybe on the pastoral side, I didn't really develop that in the sense of like talking to students individually. What I did do is I focused massively on my teaching, and that then helped me hugely because they were like, oh, the guy's like, he's really sort of, I mean, maybe to them, because I was 22, 23, maybe to them as kids, they were like, he's acting. Maybe they saw through it. They probably did, but they bought into it because remember, if you're a year 7, I guess like, when I think to me as a year 7, I think of the teachers who I thought were strict in year 7. They weren't really strict. I see them now on Facebook, but I thought they were strict, and there was value in that for them because that meant that kids like me would see them in that way, and that was enough for me to go, oh, I've got this person next. Oh, I've got to be on good behavior now in the next lesson because I've got so and so. I can't mess about. I can't take the mickey. I've got to be on it. And you know what? And that sort of spread as well to everyone in the class. So that was what I sort of aimed for when I started at that first school of mine. And as I said, it sort of worked. And I guess that leads into the point of starting at a new school, high expectations. Now, what that looks like, and actually Louis Everett on X actually asked me in the comment. Well, didn't ask me, but he asked the question in the comments. What does high expectations look like? He actually said, to quote, ask people who say set high expectations what they mean, and let me find out if you do. Well, to me, it means just, I know there's a sort of big backlash against the word strict, but yeah, it sort of just means being strict. Yeah, it means just like picking up on stuff, sweating the small stuff. It means having your boundaries, having your principles, not letting loads of stuff slide all the time. Like I remember in that first initial 6 months to a year in that school, I never let anything slide. And sometimes it was quite difficult because you'd be getting into sort of like mini conflict situations maybe with kids, sometimes. And it was quite like, it was quite stressful sometimes because you're picking up on stuff and you're making a deal out of stuff. And you know what? Sometimes there's common sense. Like, I'm not saying like I went in and was like, why have you taken an extra breath? No, it's not about that. It's like, just being solidly sort of on it, and really paying attention to things that are happening around me. And it was really energy sapping. I remember being absolutely knackered in that first year, absolutely knackered, from the acting I was doing. To be blunt, every time I walked out of the staff room and into corridors and into classrooms, I was really focused on, right, I've really got to do this. Did it pay off later on? Yeah, it absolutely did. It absolutely did pay off. After 2-3 years there, I was really established, and that's how long it took. So is that the way to approach starting at any school? No, not necessarily, but that's one example of me starting at a school. Now, fast forward to 2016, I started at a British international school in Spain where I was there for 3 years. And it was a fantastic school. Now, in that school, yes, I tried to start that way. And then after about 4 weeks, I was like, I don't need to do this here. I've sussed it out, and I don't need to do that here. So I can be a little bit more myself, if you like. I can be a little bit more not as structured, not as rigid in the way I'm approaching things. I can be a little bit more adaptable, let's say. I can be a little bit more personable, I think, in that school. And that's exactly what I did. So when I started there, my approach almost changed because I adapted to what was in front of me. The kids there were really nice, friendly, extremely well behaved on the whole. Yes, they were loud and they talked a lot, but there was no maliciousness. There was nothing where you had to look over your shoulder in a corridor. It was just a lovely environment to work in. And after 2 or 3 weeks in that, and it was a private international school, so you've got a cohort there that was very different from most of the other schools that I worked and started in. So therefore, my approach there, even though I started with that approach, because I thought, right, I've got to start with this approach. But after like a few weeks, I was like, I don't need to do it in the same way that I did it. So I was much more personable. I took more risks with my teaching. I was a lot more creative probably with my teaching in that first year than I would have been in a different context. And that's an interesting lesson, is starting in a new school. What sort of school is it? And I would always start from that place of, I'm going to be, this is me personally, I would always start from that place of, right, I need to really put my game face on now until I've sussed out what this place is and what this place is like and what the kids are like, and then go from there. And actually another school I worked in a few years later, when I came back to the UK, and I was there for 18 months, a year, 18 months. That one was tough. And my approach there was more similar to that approach in my first school. But I think because I was older then and more experienced and maybe a little bit more wiser to it, I didn't let things bother me as much as I did in that first school. Because that's another thing, is not to take things personally. Because in that first school that I was in, that was my first school experience as a teacher. And even, I think back to my PGCE. I did take things more personally on my PGCE. I never showed it to the kids, mind, but in my head, I did take it personally. And I did get upset much more easily by the things that were happening. Whereas, fast forward 15 years, and my approach was much more like, oh, well, okay, let's crack on. And much more becoming more aware of the kids and the fact that there's things you can control, there's things that you can't control. So, as I say, I've had lots of different experiences. Now, what I thought I'd turn to next is some of the comments on X that people have made, very kindly actually, when I asked them, what would your number one tip be to starting in a new school this September? So, first comment I wanted to read, because I think it's really good, is from Mr. Hull, who said, when the kids say you're great, don't listen to them because they don't know. When the kids say you're rubbish, don't listen to them because they don't know. Totally agree. Totally agree. And I think that's a fantastic tip to take forward into any new school. If you listen too much to the voices there when you first arrive in a school, you can lose your confidence pretty fast. If you were to listen to that noise, you could lose. And I'm not just talking about the kids, I'm also talking about the other adults potentially, but particularly from the kids, because the kids can be very sort of brutally honest, let's say. And if you were to listen to that noise too much when you first started, you could lose your confidence awfully quickly. And of course, they'll be trying to test you anyway. They will be trying to sort of make you think twice about what you're doing. And you have to take that with a pinch of salt. And you have to stick to what you've been trained to do. And you have to trust in your own ability. It's a little bit like being a footballer on your debut. And, you have a bad game. And the press says you have had a bad game, and then you have to come back the next game and play well. But you've got to sort of know yourself. This is what my ability level is. I will do this. I can do this. And that's sort of what you've got to do in a new school, I think, a little bit. So I really like that comment. It doesn't mean ignoring kids. It just means understanding what your role is and the fact that you aren't going to buy into every single little thing that's said about you or to you. You know yourself, you know the teacher you are, you know the person you are, so you don't have to buy into everything anyone says about you. Now, do you know what? Asian experience is massive with this. As I said to you, when I was 22, 23, I personally was desperate to get it right. So therefore, you are more conscious of things happening and things being said and all the rest of it. As age and experience kicks in, you can be much more right. I've got the experience behind me now. I know what I'm about. I've done 6-7 schools. Like, I know what I'm doing. So, yeah, and I just need to give it time, because I will get there with it. So another person, Helen, and I thought this was a really good comment. She said, take your lunch breaks. You need to stop and pause. Taking care of yourself matters a lot. And do you know what? I replied, I should have done that, because in that first school, I never took a lunch break. I sat in my room every single lunch that I can remember. I sat in my room. I did not leave my room for lunch. I spent most of my lunch working. I maybe spent 5-10 minutes sort of on YouTube or whatever, and the rest of the time I was getting ready for the next lesson after lunch. Now, you have to remember, that was in the days where you'd be teaching 22 out of 25 lessons as an NQT. So, you know, it's when people used to say to me, I remember they did say to me, "Oh, come to the staff room, Tom. You should come to the staff room. You should come to the staff room." I understand why they were saying it now, but back then I was like, I don't want to. I don't have. I'd rather have a better afternoon of teaching than go to the staff room. But you know what? That was sort of wrong, because it like led me to. It could have potentially burnt me out. I mean, I was working absolutely full on. I mean, if I'd have had, you know, more of a life at that time outside of school, you know, I think it would have like wrecked me. But the fact is, I was spending so much time outside of school working that, you know, in some ways that saved me from burning out, because I was able to do the job well, build it up. But later on, I should have gone to the staff room. I should have taken more breaks out. I should have left the room and gone for a walk or something sometimes. So I did like that advice from Helen of take your lunch breaks in a new school, but it is difficult. Like, you know, you're under massive pressure to do well, and to be almost like, the new person. So, but you've got to be almost strong enough to do that and say, you know what, I am going to have a little bit of a break from this for 30 minutes every day. And maybe that's social, because I didn't have that social adult to adult contact in those first 3 or 4 years I was teaching. I never went to the staff room. I didn't really. Now, I did make friends through, like, I played Friday football every Friday after school. And, you know, obviously you talk to people in meetings and you know, break duties and stuff like that. But in terms of the staff room, I just didn't go in there. I just didn't have the time to go in there. I didn't think I had the time to go in there. I also, you know what's sad? I also used to think about the time it would take me to walk to the staff room and to walk back. Honestly, I'd sit there and go, well, that's another 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? To walk there and walk back. So I'd be going, well, that's a waste of 5 minutes. I might as well stay in the classroom, because then I get an extra 5 or 10 minutes without having to just waste it walking from one place to another place. Yeah, I needed to chill out. Anyway, Andrew said join a teaching union. Yeah, I mean, you know, again, there's different views on this, isn't there? But I would totally buy into that advice 100%. But equally, I remember there was a senior leader in that first school I worked in, and I distinctly remember him turning around and going, he was like, he'd been there for 40 years. And I remember him turning around to me and going, the one thing I regret is paying all the thousands of pounds I have into the union over the last 40 years. Like, I'm not saying, I think he's wrong actually to say that, but it's interesting, isn't it, how people can see things from different points of view on that. But I do think you need some professional protection, especially now. You know, you look at everything that goes on now, the accusation culture, the culture of complaints is massive. So, yeah, I do buy into that advice from Andrew in terms of having that representation. Clive Lawrence, OBE, says, pace yourself. Yeah. I mean, that ties into anything, doesn't it, really? You know, you can't be the best teacher overnight, because to be a good teacher, you have to build that consistency along the way. It's not about you teaching really well for like a month. It's about building the steady consistency so the kids can feel like you're sort of part and parcel of their lives and their learning lives, if you like. That's so you got to pace yourself if you're going to make that. If you're going to go the distance in a school, then yeah, I agree with Clive. You do have to pace yourself, don't you? I don't know what you guys listening think. Stephen says asking for help is a sign of strength. Yeah, I mean, again, how many times in that first 10 years of my career should I have turned around and said, no, I'm not doing that? How many times should I have said, no, I don't know? I don't know. Because in my head, I'm scared that they might look at me saying, I don't know, and go, well, you should know. We sent an email out 2 weeks, blah, 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 blah. It's their problem, though, isn't it? Because I should have said, no, I don't know. Or, no, I didn't check that email. Or, no, I'm not doing that. Because actually, I'm too tired. And you've already asked me to do 10 other things. So I'm not doing this extra thing on this occasion. So yeah, totally agree with Stephen. Asking for help is a sign of strength. Taking advantage of the leaders you've got around you by asking them to help you to do the job better. How many times did I go up to my head? I did actually. I'm in my first school. I think that's one thing I got right. I've talked about things I got wrong. One of the things I have got right is I have never been afraid to ask for help or to be honest. I think there's been times where I should have said no to people asking me to do things. That's slightly different. But in terms of coming forward with maybe how I felt at times, and I remember there was one time towards the end in that first school, I'd gone through like a massively bad breakup, and I was literally so depressed. I was so depressed. Like every morning I was going into the school. I didn't take any time off. And I was like, what? Looking back now, I just felt so bad. I felt so bad for months and months and months. And in the end, I did tell my head of department, and then he brought one of the assistant heads into it. And fortunately, that school was really, like, the people in it were solid people, and they did sort of help me and understand it and try and make it better. But taking that risk is worth it, because again, it's on them. If they don't help you, that's on them. If you're the one opening up saying, hey, I'm struggling here. This is an interesting one. Somebody commented. Abubakar commented, don't opt out of the pension. The best time to opt out is when you collect your pension. I did a show actually on Teachers Talk Radio the other week about the teachers' pension and United Learning, who've come out with an alternative pension scheme. So that's worth a listen if you follow Teachers Talk Radio where you get your podcasts. It was a good discussion with John Coles, who's CEO of United Learning. But again, you got to be really careful. More and more people are opting out of the pension now to get the cash in hand. But I just think, be careful. I'm glad I didn't opt out in 2007-8 because I've built up, however many years now in the teachers' pension scheme. And it is a good pension scheme, even now with all the cutbacks and stuff. So that's an interesting one. That's his number one tip to someone starting in a new school: don't opt out of the pension. Yeah, fair enough. What else have we got here? So Barry Smith said, watch very closely how SLT interact with pupils. If SLT allow children to be rude to them, you're on your own. You might succeed at this school, but it'll be despite, not because of SLT. I totally agree with Barry. I worked in a school, and it's none of the ones I've actually mentioned so far in this conversation. I worked in a school that was exactly like that, where I was the one, really, I was on my own. And because I had that experience to know that, you can suss it out. You can look around. You're not challenging. You don't care. And you're not going to do it when push comes to shove. So in that scenario, my natural way of being stopped me from letting stuff go. I wish I could have. I could have probably stayed in that school. I wouldn't have been happy, but I could have stayed in that school if I'd have just bought into that and let everything go. Because then everyone else was doing that, and I could have done it, and then I would have been okay in that school. I wouldn't have been happy there, but it wouldn't have been a nightmare for me. But as it was, I started challenging, and then no one else backed up, which meant that I was then clashing with parents and students, and I was the only one who was. So I was the big bad wolf, right? So that is such a strong point when you start in a new school, right? Number one, what's the behaviour policy? But number two, in the first, month or whatever, are people gonna back this up? Are other people following this? Are leaders following this behaviour policy? It doesn't matter if another colleague is or isn't. I couldn't care less if Lydia down the corridor is following the behaviour policy or not. It's going to be helpful for me if she is, because of the consistency across. But if she's not, it's not the end of the world for me as a teacher, because I will. But if the leaders aren't in the school, if they have a policy and you enter the school and they're just paying lip service to it, they're talking about it a lot, but they're not doing anything. There's kids everywhere misbehaving. There's carnage everywhere. I remember in this school, I walked up a corridor, there were two kids play fighting at the top of the stairs. They were on the floor, literally play fighting. And just next to them were two senior leaders who were literally just stood there watching them. And that was the moment where I'm going, yeah, okay. This means that either I've got a decision to make here. It's either I'm going to carry on with what my convictions are. And it's tough because you've just started in that school as a teacher or middle leader or senior leader, whatever. You've just started there. So you don't want to go down that avenue within 5 minutes of starting in a new school. I'm going to have to be the one to start doing other people's jobs. But you have got that decision to make, and then suddenly you're on the back foot then. And yeah, I mean, as I said, I didn't stay in that school for very long. I was there for a year. Just left. Because I thought, it's not worth it. It's not worth running up against that wall. No, I don't mean the wall of the kids. I mean the wall of other people not helping by following the policy that's been agreed on. So it's better to just find somewhere where you're happy with the policy, but also other people are happy with it and they actually do something about it. They're actually willing to do something with it. Chrissy made a really nice comment on this post. She said, give attention to the consistently good and quiet students.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading. Introducing My New Term, the revolutionary technology application connecting schools and candidates directly. Whether you're a school seeking to streamline your recruitment process or a candidate searching for your next role in education, My New Term has the solution. Developed by a former teacher, the technology at My New Term now connects tens of thousands of candidates with schools every month by digitizing the recruitment process. As a candidate, you can search for jobs, set up recommended jobs, and save time by applying directly to schools via a standardized online process. No more completing manual and repetitive application forms. Employers can streamline processes and save time utilizing the leading applicant tracking system for schools and multi-academy trusts. Recruitment in education has been broken for too long. My New Term is on a mission to change just that. Visit mynewterm.com to learn more, search all the latest opportunities, or schedule a demo. My New Term, shaping the future of education recruitment.
Hi everyone, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping by to tell you about our annual history teaching extravaganza, Teachers Talk History, which is coming at you live in Manchester on the 21st of September. The tickets are completely free for classroom teachers, amazing speakers, brilliant contributors, and a fantastic opportunity to network with fellow professionals. Grab your free ticket today at ttradio.org teachers.org/events, and we will see you there.
They are intensely watching. They feel resentful when they see the negative behaviours get more time and attention than their positive efforts. Do you know what? Easy trap to fall into as a new teacher. Oh, I'm going to make great relationships with all the toughest kids. How am I going to do that? I'm just going to talk to the toughest kids all the time. I'm going to put all my attention onto the toughest kids. I'm going to talk to them the most. I'm going to focus on them in lessons the most. And I'm going to crack it with these kids. And I'm going to win with these kids. And then I'm going to have a fantastic... What about the rest of the kids? What about the rest of the kids? It's not like an episode of Good Will Hunting, where you're the psychologist and you're going to get that sense of meaning from cracking the code on the relationships with the kids that you perceive to be the ones who deserve that the most. Every kid deserves that. Every kid in there, regardless of how they are outwardly behaving, regardless of how they are being, if they're behaving really well, they could be going through all sorts of turmoil in their heads, much more than other kids who are misbehaving because they want to misbehave. There could be other kids in there who literally are going through hell. And yet, you as a teacher, because someone is outwardly behaving in a negative way, you are just latching onto that and you're ignoring the rest. I think it happens. Especially when you go into a new school, especially as a younger teacher, go into a new school, you almost think that's what your key role is, to develop relationships with the toughest kids, to be that teacher. Okay, that can be part of it, but that's not your core. Your core job is to be a good teacher. And your core job of being a good teacher is to be a good teacher for every student in the school that you teach. So I totally agree with Chrissy. I think it's a really good point. I don't know what anyone else thinks about that one. Jennifer says, be authentic and be your professional self. Well, that goes against everything I said earlier, so thanks, Jennifer. Naz says, make a seating plan for the first 2 weeks. Now, this is an interesting one. This seating plan should be boy, girl, and not in register order. And this will make it less likely that friends are sitting next to each other and create a more focused environment as you get to know the class. It's an interesting... I do agree on seating plans 100%. And I totally understand the boy, girl strategy. Totally understand that. I don't think the boy, girl is absolutely necessary. Or I think you can do any seating plan. I mean, it's an option. I think having seating plans is the bottom line. Is a really good one. I think most teachers would do that. I think most teachers starting in a new school, it'd be one of the things on their list that they need to do. I mean, one reason to do it is to learn the names. I mean, I'm terrible with names. I'm bloody appalling with names, and it takes me such a long time to learn names. If I didn't have seating plans, I would never learn any names. If I didn't have those seating plans. So it's not just about, classroom management. It's also about names and learning the names. So thanks for that, Naz. Carl, keep your head down and just get on with it. Don't be afraid to ask for help or advice. Observe carefully those around you. Don't take any crap from SLT. Thanks, Carl. Lee, pace yourself in everything. Perfection kills people. Getting told off isn't the end of the world. You'll be okay. Do you know what? That's also true. You're going to make mistakes, I remember getting told off by my first head teacher a couple of times. And yeah, it was like nothing. It was, do you know what it was? It's quite funny, actually. One of them I still remember. I don't remember the other one exactly what happened, but I think one of them was because it had snowed, and I was outside my classroom, and I said to him, "Are we going home?" And he wasn't happy. He turned around, he said something like, I can't remember, Dan, we were talking, this was like 15 years ago now, but he was like, "Why are you asking that? Of course we're not going, we're not going home. There's like a millimetre of snow, Tom. We're not going home." I was just asking, are we not going home? It's health and safety. Yeah, that was one telling off I had. I mean, I've probably had a few more, but that was one of the ones I remember. Yeah, I mean, you make mistakes. It's like, chill out. Like, everyone's like, the whole of these comments, every comment I read, I just got the words, everyone just needs to chill the hell out. Teaching's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. It's, if something goes wrong, it's not like the end of the world. Like, just have a laugh. I mean, I'm not talking about safeguarding issues here. I'm just talking about general day-to-day stuff, right? Anne-Marie actually reiterated what I said earlier. Remember that the word no exists and that you can use it. Absolutely. Vic Goddard, the legend of, says, use the experience of your colleagues and the systems of the school. They'll both help immensely. Remember, someone spent time setting the support up, so using it is a good thing. Absolutely. The behavior systems. Use the behavior systems. Use the sanction systems, the warning systems, any systems that are there. Use the systems. Don't be afraid. It doesn't make you a lesser teacher. As a new teacher in a new school, by not using the systems because you think, I'm not going to use the new systems because that makes me less if I use the systems. I'm going to do my own thing and I'm going to be better than the systems. I'm going to, that's not going to help you. It's not going to help them because they'll think, he's all right. He's not logged anything this term. He must be absolutely fine. But what if your behavior isn't that great? And what if you're just not logging it because you want to save face on some weird level? You want to be the one who doesn't log anything. That happens as well. There's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses in schools, unfortunately. And it's really important as a new teacher in a new school that you don't fall into that. Just be yourself. Just be your professional self. Use the systems where appropriate. Don't worry about what other people think. Very difficult as a young new teacher in a new school, but I'd say that's one of my number one tips, looking back, is don't care about what other people are thinking. He's used the behaviour system loads this week. Look, he's logged like 20 things on Sims. Yeah, and? Why have you logged them? Does that make any impact on whether you're a good teacher or not? No, not necessarily. You don't know. You weren't in that classroom. You don't know what happened in the classroom. You don't know the classes I've got. You might have easier classes than me. I might have tougher classes than you. So that's why I've used the system. But I'm not going to say that to you. All I'm going to do is internalise it and get on with it. What else have we got? Do not be afraid to ask for support. Loads of people have said that. TJ Watson said, look after your mental health and well-being. Yeah, how to do that is a fun one, though, isn't it? How to look after your health and well-being is a tough one. Just before I read out any more, talking of looking after your health and well-being, check out John Catt Bookshop and their amazing collection of books that support teacher well-being. Go to johncattbookshop.com. Check it out. It's pinned in the space if you're listening live. Ooh, yeah, I've just realised loads of people have commented on the show. Thank you. I'll come to those in a minute. But yeah, John Catt Bookshop, you can get 20% off any book that you order through the John Catt Bookshop. johncattbookshop.com. Use the code JCTTR2425. Get 20% off any book you order or any books you put into your basket to order. And yeah, take advantage of professional development books. Let's read some of the comments of people who are actually listening live. Thank you for commenting. Christopher Vowles says, if you have a staff room in your new school, sit with a different group of people each time you're in there. Yeah, I like that. Nathan, why haven't you retweeted Christopher's tweet? That was really good. No one will mind you. John, brilliant guy. John says, no one will mind you making mistakes if you're seen to be reflective and are trying to rectify the mistakes. Absolutely. Well, you say no one will, John. Some might. But yeah, you'd hope they won't. Afson says, so much to say about this. An important one, I would say, is think about what brought us motivation and curiosity into our subjects when we were students and how we can infuse that into our own pedagogy. Yeah, I like that. It's a really good comment. Joanne, do whatever you're asked to do as it'll help you to understand each school is catering to a bespoke community. Enjoy each day by welcoming the new learners, teaching things to you. Get a hobby that you can do each day that will help you to look at your discipline in the way a child will. This will help you to speak to the child or young adult in their speak. Thank you for that. Peter, if you're head of department or principal, create an FAQ about general stuff about the student, staff, the town, and colleagues. I found this helpful when I moved to Columbia. Yeah, like I've seen international schools who've provided literally packs with FAQs in, which is quite good actually, because it does give you a bit of a heads up, doesn't it, on the whole. Like I never got that in any of the schools I've worked in, like a proper like FAQ on lots of the things about the school and, you know, sort of ins and outs of it, and maybe interviews with the different staff there and stuff like that. I think that can be really helpful. Asif says build relationships early, connect with students. Thank you for that. Is that Asif? Sorry, Asif. That probably is how you pronounce your name. So yeah, some really good comments. I'll continue with the ones I've got here because I'm quite enjoying them actually. Miss Smith says it takes time to feel at home, get to know systems in the community, be kind to yourself, and try not to get down after a bad day. Every day is a new start. Above all, remember to enjoy being in the classroom. Listen, I mean, the times I drove back to my house, the house I was sharing at that first school, and I literally cried in the car for like half an hour before I went into the house because it was just that bad. And during my PGCE as well, just honestly, there was just proper bad days where I just get so down with everything that had happened. My mentor was a difficult one in one of my placement schools. The other one was great. One of my placement schools, I found it tough. She was quite critical of what I was doing and trying to do, and I had to sort of swallow it. And it was difficult to sort of go, yeah. And I just remember they were proper bad days. And you know, Miss Smith's right in terms of not trying to get too down after a bad day, because those bad days are going to happen big style, especially if you work in a really tough place. So you're going to have the bad days. Like as I said, I didn't have many in that school I was telling you about, that British International School, the first one that was there for 3 years in Spain. I didn't have many bad days, you know. I had some, from a teaching perspective, I didn't have many where I was like, oh my God, I literally, maybe the odd one over 3 years, but not many. Whereas those other schools I worked in, you could have one a week. So you got to think, how are you going to manage those days? How are you going to be kind to yourself? How are you going to put it in perspective? How are you going to wake up and get in the next day and just go, I'm not letting this bother me. Bring it on. Bring me more pain, because I'm just going to crack on. I'm going to smash through. Because unfortunately, you are, to be a teacher and to get through a year or 2 years, that is proper resilience. That you have to have resilience. You have to show resilience. Okay, there'll be some schools, a few schools, where you have to have less of that. Maybe. I mean, like I said, that school I was in for 3 years, I could have. It was. I'm not going to use the word easy, but it was easier. Let's put it that way. It was more comfortable. I still had to work hard, but it was more comfortable. Whereas some of those other schools, that school I did 5 years in, the school I did 3 years in after that, the school I did 18 months in a few years ago, those schools, boy, you got to have that resilience. You got to give yourself a tap on the back if you're going back in the next week after one of those days, or the next day after one of those days, and you're going back in. Because a lot of human beings will go, I'm staying off. Or a lot might go, well, I'm going to run away from it when I do go in. I'm just going to let them do what they want because it's easier. Or I'm just going to ignore that, or I'm just going to ignore this, or I'm going to run away. I'm going to go into my shell. I'm not going to tackle it. I'm not going to do it. You know, if you can't do it, you can't do it. But if you can do it, then you know, be easy on yourself for doing it. Like, okay, you've gone back in. The number of days where I had a bad day and then the following day I had a good day, but I didn't acknowledge the good day after the bad day. I just went, oh, I didn't even think about it. I went, oh, that, you know, it's another day. Whereas what I've forgotten is 2 days ago, I was literally crying. And then I've recovered from that. I've managed to do that next day, and I've just not acknowledged it. I've not gone, that was really good that you've done that. I just sort of like took it in my stride a bit too much. so to speak, without acknowledging the wins. So yeah, I think that's a really good comment. John, don't write your own lesson plans from scratch. Beg, borrow, or steal to get a pre-written lesson plan. I don't know, John, because you know what? I've tried to do that over the years. No, I cannot just use other people's lesson plans. I can use other people's resources, but I have to plan those lessons myself. I cannot do it. I don't mean using other people's resources, because I've always done that, and I'll do that as much as I possibly can. I hardly ever make my own stuff. I just rob stuff. But when it comes to the actual planning of each lesson, that's not something where I go, there's a PowerPoint, that's my lesson plan. There's someone else's PowerPoint, it looks really good. That's my plan for that lesson. I would if it was an absolute emergency, but 9 times out of 10, I'll always prioritize that. Do you know what? In some ways, that's been to my detriment, because I've spent too long on that, and I've not spent enough time on, I don't know, data, or what else? Pastoral stuff. I've spent more time planning lessons than I have on the pastoral stuff. So maybe that has been to my detriment at certain points, but at the end of the day, that's just the way I do it. I want to know those lessons are going to be good. And the only way I'll know they're going to be good, in my view, is by me taking ownership of the plan and not relying on other people's plans. The plans could be amazing, but like, for example, I'll give you an example. A couple of months ago, I was teaching a lesson on Holocaust Memorial Day or something. I can't remember the topic. It was on the Holocaust anyway. And there was a fantastic lesson resource that I found from a well-known provider of Holocaust educational resources. And the lesson plan was really detailed. It looked really good. Resources were great. But one teacher might have taken that and gone, that's my plan, and I'm literally going to read what is written on here and deliver it. There's nothing wrong with that if you can do that and that works for you. For me, I couldn't do that. I had to take that perfectly good plan and resources and reimagine it, recapture it, reconsider it, rejig it, think about how it was going to be put together. What order was it going to be put together in? How is it going to suit that class? What were the kids going to think about it? How was it going to deal with that and this? Was it too difficult for them? What's the level of challenge on this bit of it? How is the questioning going to be these questions on the plan are too difficult? That's one thing I think a lot overlook, is the level of challenge. You see a PowerPoint, oh, that'll do. You haven't even thought about the words on it or what. Now, you know what? All this takes time. Schools should be given, in my opinion, should be given that time for teachers to plan properly. Sometimes there just isn't the time, in which case you've just got to blag it. You've got to take a PowerPoint, literally deliver with it on the spot, try your best with it, but it's not as good, is it? It's nowhere near as good. It can never be as good. Another comment. If you're a PE teacher, build long-lasting friendships with the head of catering and the caretaker. Love it. From Stan06. Nicola says, be friendly and find out about your colleagues. Always contribute to collections. Yeah. I mean, I don't, because I'm a stingy, horrible man. But yeah, always contribute to collections. Music teacher, get to know the admin staff and caretakers. They're the ones who you'll need in many an emergency. That is absolutely true. Barry, the caretaker, he used to come in my classroom every day at 4:30. I was still there. Talk to them, build up, have respect for them. I'll tell you what, I remember that Barry saying to me, there's teachers in here who don't have any respect for me whatsoever. Literally, I walk in, they literally don't even acknowledge my existence. They don't even look at me. I remember him saying that to me on a few occasions. And I thought, it doesn't surprise me, but it's pretty sad, isn't it? I mean, he was a nice guy and he was quite helpful as well. He helped me out quite a few times with different things. Like I lost a key from my classroom once. He went and got a key cut. Little things like that. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll do it for you, Tom. Like, yeah, no problem. But I know for an absolute fact that he was quite, he did clock on when people just literally blanked him, or when people were quite dismissive and not very sort of, didn't see him as a person. He just saw him as like a caretaker. It's like, oh, that's his job. Leave him to it. I don't really care. Don't get me wrong. I didn't like know many of the cleaners. Like I did say hi and stuff, but I didn't. But with him, I did because I probably saw more of him. I'm not saying spend like an hour with the caretaker every day, but you know, it is good to try and get to know him. Mr. Allen says, don't faff about getting to know you, me lessons. A brief introduction and then teach them some stuff. And find out what they've learned before you start and revise that stuff regularly. They will be doing stuff they feel a bit of confidence with, so they will feel safe. Yeah, I don't know. I've got split views on that because some of the getting to know me, you lessons, they can be quite good. It totally depends what you do. But I understand there's probably two different views on that. Are they good? Are they not? It'd be interesting what people listening think about those get to know me. Those sort of icebreakery lessons. Obviously, you've got the lessons where you set expectations. That's probably a bit different. But yeah. Mrs. CS says gravitate to whatever is positive in the school. John, be friendly and approachable, but remember you're their teacher, not their friend. Yeah, absolutely. We sort of touched on that earlier, the idea of how you approach being a teacher. Are you approaching it like your main role is to be their mate and to be somewhere where he's well sounding, I can talk to him whenever I want about anything? They've already got mates. They've got their own mates. And if they don't have their own mates, then tell them to find their own mates. Help them to find their own mates, but you can't be their mate. This is the thing. Their parents might be their mates as well. Their parents might be exactly the same as their mates for them. And therefore, you might be the only one who gives them a different role in their life, rather than just matey mate all the time. I mentioned at the beginning of this show how, my experience have started in schools, and I mentioned in that first school, and probably in other schools I've been in, I probably have kept that distance. I've kept that sort of, I wouldn't call it being standoffish, but, I've been friendly, but I've kept my role as the teacher. Doesn't mean you can't help. Doesn't mean you can't be helpful, friendly, but in the school building, I mean, when I've been on trips and stuff, that's where I've probably come out of my shell. When I've been on school trips to France and Poland and, and you go on residentials and stuff, and that's a great opportunity to, let the guard down a little bit and have some chats one-to-one with kids and, and all that. But that's still different from being their mate. That's different from on a school trip, going to the back of the bus and literally laughing and joking with them while they're behaving in horrible ways towards the bus driver or something. And it happens. Honestly, it happens, and it's something I totally agree. Personally, I agree with John when he says, be friendly and approachable, but remember you're the teacher. Alistair, learn key expectations that SLT have of you and colleagues. Helpful teacher says, be a sponge. Observe teachers who've been there for a long time. Try things out and see what works and what doesn't. Yeah, I like that. Duke of Alpha, don't talk about how things were done at your previous school. I made that mistake and it cost me. What do people think about that? Don't talk about things that were done at how things were done at your previous school. Yeah, I mean, I can think of meetings where it's like, oh, at my place we did it this way. Yeah. My last school was perfect and we did it this way and we were Ofsted outstanding 5 grades in a row. That sort of thing. It's like, oh God. Okay, that may be true. It may have worked there. It might not work here. And equally, it may be that school is on a different part of its journey than that other school is. It might be that they're not ready to do what it is that you're saying they should do. Yeah, Interesting point anyway. Derek, you do not have to volunteer for anything. It's okay to say no. Absolutely. It's okay to just go, no, I'm not interested in that one. Don't have to be the keen bean on everything. I think we mentioned that earlier. And I think as a new member of staff in a new school, it's tempting to feel like you have to do that. And that's the way to make an impression. But it might not be. The way to make an impression might be just to be a good teacher. And then that filters that to the parents. Then the parents filter it to the senior leaders. Then it filters round in a triangle, and it's like, oh, he's pretty good in. You know, he's probably pretty good in. He hasn't volunteered for a lot, but he seems like a good teacher, and that's obviously like paramount to what we're trying to do here. That sort of thing. Oh, Samuel says, don't take yourself so seriously. Cut as many corners as possible and make the kids laugh. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not bad advice. I mean, I think the making the kids laugh bit, I don't know if that's a thing that I would advise a new teacher to take into a new school in the first week. Right, I'm going to be like Peter Kay now. Right, everyone, come into the Comedy Palace. It's time to listen to an hour of stand-up comedy from me, and then we might learn something in the last 2 minutes. You know, don't know. I'm sure that's not what Samuel's saying, by the way. But yeah, I just read it and thought, oh, danger. So cut as many corners as possible. You know what? Yeah, cut in the right corners. Like, I've got no problem with that. He also says, don't take yourself so seriously. Yeah, I've got no problem with any of that, even though I've probably done it in the past. Sarah says, trolley bag. Eventually, you might have plenty of marking and need to move rooms. So get a trolley bag. She's got a picture of a trolley bag. That's cool. Kind of brings back memories of COVID, though, which I hate. COVID teaching. God, that was just, yeah. Sir Scout, we've got a few of these more to do. And then, unless anyone's calling in and got something to say, I'm going to wrap up after a few more. But we've got some other good ones to go through first in the last few minutes. We've got Ian Ross, who said, relationships, routine and behaviour is your first, second and third priority. Be yourself and radiate the passion you have for your subject. Accept the job is never done. Have strict routines for yourself to manage work-life balance and work smarter, not harder. Blooming heck, they're good tips, those, Ian. Thanks for that. Scally says, introduce yourself to other staff, talk to your teaching assistants, get to know the SEND department. When you walk along the corridor, meet people's gaze and say hello. That's a good tip, you know. Because when you're a new teacher in a new school, this has happened to me. You walk down a corridor, no one's like giving you those sort of like really nice, even just, I don't mean like over the top, I just mean like higher. Like, yeah, like, so obviously doing that yourself might be quite nice. Streatley Primary School, be clear what your expectations look like, be consistent, use marking, feedback into planning, don't cut corners that underpin everything. Well, you need to tell that to blooming Samuel, who also commented saying cut corners. Not to me. John Locke says, genuinely become friendly with the person who sorts cover, IT services, and admin reprographics. Totally agree. Totally agree, especially the cover people. Colin, I've taught in 5 schools. The most important thing I've found is that you need allies. I hate to say network, but you need go-to educators and support staff you can rely on. Anne says, don't work on Saturdays. Take the day off. What doesn't get done on Sunday doesn't get done, and the world won't end. What do people think about that one? I mean, I agree, but equally, it's one of them where people say to you, don't work on a Saturday. Don't work on the weekends. And then you come back on Monday and you get in trouble because you haven't done the work that they needed you to do. And then you feel terrible for the rest of the week because you're on catch-up. So I agree, but I also, that's okay as long as you can do it. But if you're in a school where you're under that much pressure, and if you don't do anything on a weekend, then you're literally going to pay the price for the whole week, and you might have a breakdown or something. Then I'm probably going to do a bit of work on Saturday just to make sure that I can survive for that week. Now, that's wrong. That is wrong, but it's just reality. it might be wrong, but that's, sometimes it's just reality. Listen, there's so many more comments on the thread. There's so many more things I could talk about here, but we're coming towards the end because my voice is going to need a rest. But I want to thank everyone who's listened all the way through. I've really enjoyed talking about this. It's a topic that I think is important. I think it's something that can... there's a lot of new teachers are starting at new schools more often than they ever have. So I think these conversations are good ones to have, especially because those people who already work in schools will think, okay, we've got new staff coming in. How can we help them to have the best experience they can have? And what might they be thinking or feeling? So listen, thanks for listening. Again, a final shout out to John Catt Educational for supporting the show tonight. We really appreciate you, John Catt. So thank you very much. Big shout out to everyone listening along. Big shout out to Nathan in the background who's administrated tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. with Lucy. And until then, Teachers Talk Radio signing off.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.